There's a state in America where 17.7% of seniors over 60 quietly skipped meals last year because they couldn't afford groceries. And it's not a developing country. It's the same state where retirement brochures still promise rolling green hills and front porch sunsets. The numbers don't match the postcards anymore. Across America, the retirement map is being redrawn in real time. Not by lifestyle, not by weather, by math, by rural hospitals that closed last Tuesday, by insurance premiums that doubled in 5 years, by states that promised seniors a soft landing and quietly rebuilt the runway out of duct tape. In this countdown, we're exposing the 10 states Americans have stopped retiring to in 2026. And not in the lazy, vague, top 10 listicle way. We're talking about counties where the nearest hospital is 90 minutes away, states where 2/3 of rural ERs could shut down in the next 3 years, places where the cost of living looks affordable on paper until you factor in the part where you can't get a doctor's appointment for 4 months. One state on this list ranks dead last in every retirement category that matters. Another has the highest rural hospital closure rate in the country. A third is so dependent on tornado season that home insurance is now a luxury. Think about it. You probably know someone who is planning to retire to one of these states. Maybe you were that someone. Subscribe before your retirement plan becomes a cautionary tale. Like the video if you've ever opened Zillow in a southern state and thought, wait, that house can't possibly be that cheap. It is. There's just a reason. Let's break it down. Number 10. Vermont. The retirement plan that taxes you for noticing the leaves change. There's a state in New England where 100% of your IRA withdrawal is supposed to be exempt from state taxes starting in 2026, except for the part where it actually isn't, depending on your income. Welcome to Vermont, beautiful, bookish, and quietly expensive in ways the brochure forgot to mention. Vermont sells itself like a Hallmark movie set. Maple syrup, covered bridges, kids in fleece, a general store that still sells things by the pound, and then you retire there and discover the maple syrup is the cheapest thing on the menu. The numbers. Top marginal income tax rate sitting at 8.75%, one of the highest in the nation. Vermont still partially taxes Social Security for retirees with AGI above $50,000 single or $65,000 joint. Property taxes ranking among the top 10 highest in the country. Median home price hovering near $390,000, which is high for a state with a population smaller than the Bronx. Heating costs absurd. Rural healthcare access thin, with several critical access hospitals running on fumes. Reddit quote, "You can't afford to move here, and you can't afford to leave once your boiler quits in January." What it's like. Living in Vermont in retirement is like dating a poet who refuses to get a real job but sends you the bill for the candles. Beautiful, sure, but the math is exhausting. You walk outside in February, your eyelids stick together, your driveway is a glacier with opinions, your neighbor waves while shoveling for the 3rd time that morning, and you realize this is your life now until April. And about the leaves, the famous leaves, yes, they're stunning for 11 days in October, then everything is just gray until late May. Where it gets uncomfortable, Vermont's leadership has spent decades protecting the brand of small-town authenticity, which sounds noble until you realize it also means restrictive housing supply, slow infrastructure investment, and a tax structure that punishes anyone whose retirement income drifts above modest. Younger workers are leaving. The state is aging faster than almost anywhere in America. Sharp contrast. New Hampshire and Vermont share a border, similar populations, similar weather. New Hampshire has no income tax. Vermont has one of the highest in the country. Same trees, very different bank accounts. Vermont isn't failing because it isn't beautiful. It's failing because beauty here costs you twice. Once for the view and once for the privilege of paying the tax bill on the view. Number 9. Tennessee, where the hospital just closed, but the welcome sign is still up. There's a state in the South where 44% of rural hospitals are at risk of closing, and yet retirement marketers still call it the next great affordable haven. Welcome to Tennessee. On paper, Tennessee should be in the top tier. No state income tax, mild winters compared to the Northeast, lower cost of living than the national average, music history, Bourbon Trail, Smoky Mountains. You read the brochure and start packing. Then you arrive and realize the brochure was published before your local hospital filed for bankruptcy. The numbers. 44% of Tennessee's rural hospitals are flagged as vulnerable to closure, according to the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform. Life expectancy hovers around 74.6 years, well below the national average. Drug overdose deaths remain among the highest per capita in the country, senior poverty rate roughly 11%. And while the state offers no income tax, sales tax stacks fast, with combined rates often pushing past 9.5%, one of the highest in the nation. Reddit quote, Tennessee is great until you need a specialist and the closest one is in another time zone. What living here actually feels like. Tennessee in retirement is like dating someone with a great Instagram and no driver's license. Charming when you visit, frustrating when you actually need them to show up. Picture this. You retire to a quaint town outside Knoxville. The porch is perfect. The barbecue is real. You feel like you've won. Then your wife has chest pain at 2 a.m. and the nearest functioning ER is 50 minutes away on a road designed before seatbelts. The opioid ID crisis still leaves long shadows, particularly in eastern counties where economic recovery has lagged. And the climate is shifting hard, with summers stretching longer and humidity that makes the Florida coast feel temperate. Sharp contrast. Tennessee and North Carolina share a mountain range and similar promotion budgets. North Carolina expanded Medicaid. Tennessee did not. Result, a measurably better rural hospital survival rate next door. Tennessee isn't failing because it lacks charm. It's failing because charm doesn't show up to the emergency room. Number 8. Delaware. The first state to file your retirement and the last to call you back. Delaware is the second smallest state in America and somehow still found a way to fail seniors in 3 different categories at once. Delaware sells itself as the tax-friendly secret of the Northeast. No sales tax, no estate tax. Reasonable property taxes by regional standards. Beachfront communities. Easy access to Philly, D.C., and New York for the family visits. And then the medical bills arrive. The numbers. Delaware earned an F grade for senior healthcare in the 2024 Senior Living Report. Drug costs are roughly 39% above the national average. The state has the worst stroke death rate in the country. Healthcare costs ranked 44th, access ranked 40th, outcomes ranked 41st. That's the trifecta. Median home price has climbed past $390,000 along the coast, with retirement-heavy Sussex County leading the surge. And the state's geriatric specialist density falls in the bottom third nationally. Reddit quote, You moved here for the beach and the tax break. Now you drive 90 minutes to find a cardiologist who's accepting new Medicare patients. What living here actually feels like. Delaware in retirement is like buying a beach house and discovering the only doctor in town also runs the bait shop. Affordable on paper, terrifying in practice. Picture this, you're 72, your blood pressure spikes, you call the local clinic, first available appointment, 11 weeks. Meanwhile, the state's stroke death rate keeps climbing because preventive care never quite reaches the people who need it. And let's talk traffic on Route 1 in summer. You retired to Delaware to escape congestion, and now every weekend from Memorial Day to Labor Day, you're stuck behind 60,000 tourists trying to find parking in Rehoboth. Where it gets uncomfortable, Delaware's healthcare infrastructure has been quietly underbuilt for decades. The state relied on its proximity to Philadelphia and Baltimore for specialty care. Then those border systems started rationing access for out-of-state Medicare patients. Sharp contrast. Delaware and Rhode Island are both small Atlantic states. Rhode Island ranks in the middle on senior healthcare. Delaware ranks near the bottom. Different choices, different outcomes. Delaware isn't failing because it's hostile to seniors. It's failing because it sold the dream of easy retirement without building the medical system to support it. Number 7. Kansas. Where the wind doesn't blow, it audits you. There's a state in the heartland where 47% of rural hospitals are at risk of closing, and tornado season lasts longer than most retirees stay. Welcome to Kansas. Kansas markets itself with a peculiar honesty. Wide open spaces, low cost of living, friendly neighbors, no surprises. Then you live there for 18 months and realize the no surprises part included no excitement, no specialists, and no exit strategy when the weather turns. The numbers. 47% of rural hospitals in Kansas are vulnerable to closure, according to 2025 data. Kansas ranks in the bottom 5 in the Seniorly Retirement Study, with low scores in quality of life and health care. Property taxes rank in the top 15 highest, with effective rates above 1.4%. Kansas partially taxes Social Security for higher-income retirees. Tornado season runs roughly April through June, and the state averages around 90 tornadoes per year, one of the highest counts in the country. Reddit quote, "You move to Kansas for the cheap real estate, then realize the house is cheap because nothing happens here, including healthcare. What living here actually feels like. Retirement in Kansas is like dating someone who only talks about the weather, and unfortunately the weather is mostly trying to kill you. Picture this. You're sipping coffee at 6 a.m. on your screened porch. The sky goes from blue to green to purple in 8 minutes. The sirens start. You head to the basement again. You emerge 2 hours later to find your patio furniture in the next county and your insurance premium preemptively rising. The healthcare gap is the slow burn. Outside Wichita, Kansas City suburbs, and Topeka, specialty care thins out fast. Cardiologists, oncologists, geriatricians, all clustered in maybe 4 zip codes. If you retire to a small town, you're not retiring near a doctor. You're retiring near a parking lot where a doctor used to work. Sharp contrast. Nebraska borders Kansas, similar climate, similar wind, similar tornadoes. Nebraska's rural hospital closure risk sits significantly lower because of better Medicaid integration and stronger state hospital subsidies. Same wind, different math. Kansas isn't failing because it's flat. It's failing because flat without infrastructure means a long drive to anywhere that matters. Number 6. Texas, where the welcome sign says low taxes and the thermometer says lawsuit. Texas brings in nearly 80,000 retirees a year and quietly buries a growing number of them every summer due to heat-related illness. Welcome to Texas, where the property tax breaks for seniors got bigger in 2025, and so did the heat dome. Texas is the state every retirement YouTube video keeps recommending. No income tax. A new $200,000 senior homestead exemption that erased school district property taxes for the majority of seniors. Big homes, big cars, big stakes. And then July arrives and you realize you've moved to a kiln with a Republican governor. The numbers. Texas heat-related deaths have climbed sharply over the past 5 years, with 2023 setting a state record. The state has one of the highest uninsured rates in the country, which strains hospital capacity even for insured retirees. Rural healthcare access remains uneven, with 47 rural hospitals flagged as vulnerable to closure, the highest absolute count of any state. Median home insurance premiums have risen above $5,000 a year in many counties due to hail, hurricane, and wildfire risk. Texas property taxes, even after the 2025 reforms, remain among the highest as a percentage of home value, ranking in the top 10 nationally for non-senior homeowners. Reddit quote, "The tax breaks are great until your AC dies in August and the repairman can't come for 8 days. What living here actually feels like." Retiring to Texas is like dating someone who's gorgeous, generous on paper, and tries to murder you for 4 months a year. Picture this. You're 70. It's 107 degrees outside. The grid is straining again. You're sitting in your living room praying ERCOT doesn't issue another conservation alert because your meds need refrigeration. The senior tax exemptions saved you thousands, but the new central AC unit costs twice that. Where it gets uncomfortable, Texas's growth has outpaced its medical infrastructure in dozens of communities. Hospital systems are concentrating in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin, while smaller towns lose services every year. The 2025 dementia research investment of $3 billion is significant, but it doesn't fix the present-tense problem of rural ERs closing. Sharp contrast. Texas and Florida both market themselves as no-income tax retirement havens. Florida has invested heavily in senior-specific Medicare infrastructure for decades. Texas is still catching up. Same tax pitch, different healthcare reality. Texas isn't failing because it's hot. It's failing because the heat has gotten worse, the grid has gotten older, and the medical safety net has gotten thinner, all at the same time. Hey, before we get into the bottom 5, the numbers we're about to cover are the worst of the worst. The states where retirement isn't just expensive or inconvenient, it's structurally hostile. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one we're working on is 10 states quietly bankrupting their retirees, and you'll want to see who made it. Like the video if you've ever told a relative, Don't move there. Drop a comment with the state your friends keep retiring to that makes you nervous. Real conversations happen in the comments, and I read them. Now let's keep going. Number 5. Georgia. The peach state, where the peach is fine and the healthcare is on fire. There's a state in the southeast where the senior healthcare report card got an F, and Atlanta keeps pricing out the same retirees it used to attract. Welcome to Georgia. Georgia used to be the value play of Southern retirement. Lower cost than Florida, warmer than the Carolinas. Atlanta giving you airport access to anywhere. Mild winters, beautiful springs. Then the math caught up. The numbers. Georgia received an F grade in the 2024 Senior Living Senior Healthcare Report. The state has not expanded Medicaid, which puts pressure on rural hospitals across roughly 120 counties. Atlanta's median home price climbed past $410,000 in 2025, pricing out fixed-income retirees. Senior poverty hovers near 11%. Drug overdose deaths increased over 30% across the state in the 5 years ending 2024. And opioid prescription rates remain stubbornly high in southern Georgia counties. Reddit quote, "We retired here in 2018, expecting cheap living and good weather. We got the weather. What living here actually feels like. Georgia in retirement is like dating someone whose family seemed great when you met them, and now they're slowly draining your savings while changing the subject. Picture this. You move to a town an hour outside Atlanta. Property is affordable. Then the closest hospital ends inpatient services. Then your auto insurance jumps because of suburban sprawl crime patterns. Then your daughter calls and says childcare in metro Atlanta now costs more than her mortgage, so could she and the kids stay with you? That's how Georgia retirement turns into Georgia caretaking. The climate is shifting, with summers extending and humidity peaking earlier. Hurricanes that used to hit only the coast now reach inland with force, with Hurricane Helene in 2024, demonstrating how vulnerable rural Georgia is. A structure has become. Sharp contrast. Georgia and South Carolina share a border and similar weather. South Carolina expanded Medicaid coverage for low-income adults indirectly through state programs. Georgia chose the path of resistance. Rural Georgia hospitals are paying the price. Georgia isn't failing because it's still beautiful. It's failing because the cost of living rose faster than the income and the medical system stopped catching the people falling through. Number 4. Arkansas, where 66% of rural hospitals could close, and the Walmart is still open. There's a state where 2 out of every 3 rural hospitals are flagged as financially vulnerable, the highest rate in the country. Welcome to Arkansas. Arkansas's retirement appeal is built on a single word, cheap. Median home price under $200,000. Cost of living roughly 13% below the national average. No tax on Social Security. Plenty of fishing. Plenty of small-town quiet, and not nearly enough hospitals. The numbers. 66% of Arkansas's rural hospitals are at risk of closure, according to the 2025 Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform analysis, the highest percentage of any state in the country. 26% of those rural hospitals are at immediate risk, meaning closure within 2 to 3 years. Arkansas ranks among the bottom 10 states for life expectancy, with male life expectancy around 73 years. Senior poverty rate sits near 11.4%. The state has one of the lowest median household incomes in the country, around $56,000. Educational attainment ranks in the bottom tier nationally, and the opioid crisis remains acute, particularly in the Ozark and Delta regions. Reddit, quote, "The houses here are cheap because there's nothing to bring you back if you leave. What living here actually feels like." Retirement in Arkansas is like dating someone who promises low maintenance and then breaks down 6 months in with no warranty. Picture this. You retire to a beautiful Ozark cabin. Sunsets, deer, peace. Then your wife slips on ice in February. The nearest hospital with orthopedic surgery is 95 minutes away. That hospital announces 6 months later it's converting to emergency-only care. Now the orthopedic surgeon is 2 hours away. The cabin is still beautiful. The cabin can't drive you to physical therapy. Where it gets uncomfortable, Arkansas's state government has historically prioritized low TIs, taxes, and minimal regulation, which keeps cost of living down but starves rural infrastructure. The state's Medicaid expansion partial program, often called private option or air home, has helped, but it hasn't been enough to stabilize rural healthcare finances. Sharp contrast. Arkansas and Missouri are similar in size, climate, and demographics. Missouri's rural hospital risk rate, while still high at around 32%, is roughly half of Arkansas's. Same hills, different healthcare floor. Arkansas isn't failing because it's poor. It's failing because cheap retirement living without medical access is just delayed disaster, and the calendar keeps moving. Number 3. Alabama, where the hospital sign still glows, but only until next Tuesday. There's a state where nearly half of rural hospitals are at immediate risk of closing in the next 2 to 3 years, and the average senior life expectancy is among the lowest in America. Welcome to Alabama. Alabama markets itself as the affordable Sunbelt alternative, cheaper than Florida, warmer than Tennessee, beach access on the Gulf, friendly people, slow pace, SEC football for entertainment, and underneath, a senior healthcare crisis that ranks among the worst in the country. The numbers: 60% of Alabama's rural hospitals are at risk of closure, according to recent analysis. 48% are at immediate risk, meaning closure within the next 2 to 3 years. Alabama earned an F grade in the 2024 Senior Living Senior Healthcare Report, ranking 49th nationally for senior medical outcomes. Bankrate ranked Alabama 50th, the worst state for retirement, in its 2025 study. State life expectancy sits around 73.2 years, among the 5 lowest in the nation. Senior poverty rate runs about 12.7%. And one private insurer, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, controls roughly 94% of the large group private insurance market, distorting hospital reimbursement statewide. Reddit quote: "The hospital in our town closed in 2024. The next one over closed in 2025. We're starting to think the third one is just a matter of time. What living here actually feels like." Alabama in retirement is like dating someone who's warm, friendly, and quietly skipping their own doctor's appointments. You worry about them. Eventually, you become them. Picture this. You retire to a small town outside Mobile. The barbecue is exceptional. Your neighbors brought you a casserole. Then, your husband has a heart event. The closest cath lab is now 80 miles away because the rural hospital that used to do them shut down 18 months ago. The casserole is saintly, warm in the fridge. The hospital is not. Where it gets uncomfortable, Alabama is one of 10 states that have not expanded Medicaid under the ACA, which directly affects rural hospital finances. Combined with the near-monopoly insurance market, rural hospitals are losing money on most patient encounters. The result is a slow-motion collapse of the medical safety net. Sharp contrast: Alabama and Louisiana, geographic neighbors with similar climates and demographics. Louisiana expanded Medicaid in 2016 and saw rural hospital finances stabilize somewhat. Alabama did not. Same humidity, different odds of getting an ambulance to arrive in time. Alabama isn't failing because it's poor. It's failing because affordability without health care is a trap, and the trap keeps closing slowly. Number 2. Oklahoma, where the tornado is the second most expensive thing on your insurance bill. There's a state where home insurance premiums have jumped 51% since 2019, and the healthcare system ranks 48th in the nation. Welcome to Oklahoma. Oklahoma sells itself as Texas without the smug. Lower home prices, no state tax on Social Security, friendly, slow, religious, predictable. Some of the lowest rents in the country, with average monthly rent sitting near $1,450, about 28% below the national average. Then the storm sirens go off, and your wallet starts crying. The numbers. Oklahoma ranks 49th out of 50 in the Wallet Hub 2026 retirement study, with poor scores across affordability, quality of life, and healthcare. Bankrate ranked Oklahoma 48th, the third worst state for retirement in 2025. Healthcare access and affordability ranks 48th in the Commonwealth Fund's 2025 scorecard, with only Nevada, Mississippi, and Texas ranking lower. Average home insurance premiums hit $4,623 a year, the third highest in the nation, compared to a national average of $2,329. Insurance rates have climbed 51% since 2019, driven by tornadoes, hail, and severe weather. Drug overdose deaths sit above 32 per 100,000 people. Suicide rate is roughly 22 per 100,000, ranking 46th nationally. Oklahoma was ranked 50th for breast cancer deaths and 42nd for infant mortality, and much of the state sits in Tornado Alley, with severe weather events accelerating in frequency. Reddit quote, "We came for the cheap rent. We stayed because we couldn't afford to move out. What living here actually feels like. Retirement in Oklahoma is like dating someone whose entire family is one bad weather event away from declaring bankruptcy. Picture this. You retire to a charming small town. Property is cheap. The locals are kind. You buy a small house outright. Then the spring storms come. Hail damages your roof. Rents jumps another 12%. A neighbor's house gets hit by an EF2 tornado. The repair contractor is booked through October. You start checking weather radar like other people check social media. Where it gets uncomfortable, Oklahoma's healthcare and infrastructure have been chronically underfunded for decades, and recent state legislative attempts to introduce consumer protections on insurance have moved slowly. The state's reliance on private insurance markets in a high-risk weather zone has created an affordability spiral that's especially brutal on fixed-income retirees. Sharp contrast. Oklahoma and Iowa are both plain states with farming economies and severe weather risks. Iowa's healthcare ranks in the top 20 nationally. Oklahoma's ranks near the bottom. Same wheat, very different futures. Oklahoma isn't failing because of the weather. It's failing because the weather got worse, the insurance got more expensive, and nobody fixed the medical system in between. Number 1. Kentucky, the state that ranks dead last and somehow still hands out brochures. There's a state where 17.7% of seniors over 60 reported food insecurity in the past year, where 35.3% of seniors are obese, and where the state has ranked dead last for retirement 2 years running. Welcome to Kentucky. Kentucky's pitch is the same pitch every poor state in America makes. The cost of living is low. The bourbon is good. The horses are pretty. Real estate is cheap, with the average home priced around $224,468, and no state income tax on Social Security. Then you actually retire there. The numbers. Kentucky ranked 50th out of 50 in the Wallet Hub 2026 retirement study, the worst state in America to retire, for the second year in a row. 17.7% of Kentuckians 60 and older reported food insecurity in the past year, ranking 46th nationally. 11% of seniors 65 and older live below the poverty line. 40.1% of Kentucky seniors live with a disability. 35.3% of Kentucky seniors are classified as obese. The state has one of the highest opioid overdose death rates in America. Healthcare access in eastern Kentucky and Appalachia has been described as a medical desert by the Shep Center. Life expectancy in Kentucky sits around 74 years, well below the national average of 78.4. Reddit quote, "Kentucky is the only state where the welcome sign and the warning sign are the same thing. What living here actually feels like. Retirement in Kentucky is like dating someone who promises a quiet life and then introduces you to 4 chronic illnesses by year 2. Picture this. You retire to a charming town in eastern Kentucky. The hills are stunning. Your neighbors bake bread. Then your knees start hurting. The orthopedic surgeon is 2 hours away. The pharmacy is closing because they can't compete with mail order. Your prescription gets delayed. Your blood pressure ticks up. Your annual checkup is resky. Healed twice because the doctor moved to North Carolina. The hills are still stunning. The healthcare is still 2 hours away. Where it gets uncomfortable, Kentucky's economic decline has been multi-generational, tied to the collapse of coal, the opioid crisis, and decades of underinvestment in rural healthcare. The state's leadership has tried economic diversification programs, broadband expansion, and tax incentives, but none have moved the needle fast enough to offset the demographic squeeze on senior health. Sharp contrast. Kentucky and Virginia share a long border and similar Appalachian geography. Virginia ranks in the top 15 for senior healthcare nationally. Kentucky ranks at the bottom. Same hills, very different chances of growing old well. Kentucky isn't failing because it's beautiful. It's failing because the structural promises of affordable rural retirement quietly stopped being kept years ago, and nobody updated the brochure. So there it is. 10 states where retirement isn't quietly collapsing, it's already collapsed in the places that matter most. Healthcare deserts, insurance crises, hospital closures that aren't projected, they're scheduled, tax structures that look friendly until you read the fine print. And the brutal truth nobody markets, that affordable retirement without infrastructure is just delayed bankruptcy with a porch view. The states topping the retirement charts in 2026, Wyoming, Florida, South Dakota, Colorado, Minnesota, are not winning because they're cheap. They're winning because they invested in the things that matter when you're 75 and the body starts negotiating. Doctors, hospitals, senior services, tax structures designed for fixed incomes, climate that doesn't try to kill you 4 months a year. The 10 states on this list got the marketing right and the medicine wrong, and the people moving away aren't doing it dramatically. They're doing it quietly, one U-Haul at a time, one closed hospital at a time. If this list helped, share it with the relative who keeps mentioning that great little town in the South. Hit subscribe, because next we're breaking down the 10 states where Social Security doesn't cover rent anymore, and you'll want the receipts. Drop a comment if your state made the list, or if you think one was missing. And remember, the best retirement state isn't the cheapest one. It's the one that's still answering the phone when you call 911.